Hi everyone, welcome back to the second video on perfect competition. We left off right here with a firm that was earning economic profit. Right, so we found the market price, that was the demand and the marginal revenue curve for the representative firm. At Q star, the profit maximizing output level, their average total cost was less than the price, so they earned an economic profit. I drew this again just to clean it up a little bit, as I want to think about what does this mean. And you can see the heading changed. When when firms in economic are in perfect competition. So when firms are earning an economic profit in perfect competition, what happens? Well, up here in the top right corner, I put down the characteristics, right? The characteristics or assumptions of perfect competition. Remember, there are many small firms all making identical products in a marketplace with low barriers to entry. And it's that last one that we want to think about. So when we say economic profit, we mean returns, profits above and beyond a normal return on your investment. So that's more than just the value of your labor and your land and your equipment and whatever other resources you put into the business. It's something above and beyond that. And so if people figure out, hey, people in the, let's say, snowplow business, right, people who are plowing driveways are making a lot of money, more money than other similar investments I know of that type. Then what happens? Other people will be interested in doing it. And since there are low barriers to entry, there's nothing to prevent them from entering that market as well. And this is where it gets, even more exciting. Right? Let me change colors here. So let's say that people realize, hey, people in this industry, let's call it plowing driveways, are making above average profits. What happens if there are low barriers to entry? Well, that means other people can get started in that industry, right? We said maybe you can scrape together, borrow enough money to get a truck and a plow. I mean, I'd wait until fall. I don't think there's much business for that right now, but and you get started in the driveway plowing business. So what happens in your graph? Well, think back to the determinants of demand and the determinants of supply, right? Things that shift the demand curve and the supply curve. What happens if there are more sellers in the marketplace? Well, new sellers in the marketplace means that the supply curve shifts out, right? There's more, the market supply curve moves up. So let's shift this to the right. Right? There's an increase in supply, and this is due to entry. Right? Firms enter. And what happens then to the market price? Well, it goes down, right? The new market price is smaller. Now I skipped to the chase here. I tried to hit right here because look what happens. Q star 2, right? The new equilibrium output level for the firm is a little smaller. The firm says, yeah, price is lower. It's not, the marginal revenue is lower. Marginal revenue hits marginal cost earlier, so the profit maximizing output level for the firm is smaller than it was before. And then what's the other important thing here? Well, are they earning an economic profit? No, they're not. But are they earning losses? No, as it turns out, the price is just equal to the average total cost. And so they're operating at what we call their break-even point because the price equals average total cost. And that is the long-run picture in perfect competition. You may be at a situation like the initial equilibrium where they're earning economic profit, but when other people observe that, they enter, right, because there are low barriers to entry. They enter the market, that shifts the supply curve to the right. That drives the market price down until the firms that are left are in an economic sense just breaking even. Now they can still be earning some positive accounting profit when they do their taxes, but it's a normal return on their investments, not some extra reward, some extra big return. So that's the long run scenario with break even. So you've seen what happens when there's economic profit. Economic profit invites entry. The firms compete that away until they just break even. Now, is that the only scenario? Well, unfortunately, no. Right? Breaking even and earning economic profit are not the only possibilities. So let's sketch out a new market graph. Right, that's for the entire market. And since in perfect competition they are price takers, there's our demand and marginal revenue curve. Here's our marginal cost curve. So we can find the profit maximizing output level for the firm. That's right here, right? Where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That gives us Q star for the firm. And say, all right, is this firm earning an economic profit? Well, I don't know. If they're going to produce, this is Q star is the optimal output level, but I don't have enough information to figure out if they're earning a profit. So let's draw in the average total cost curve. And now I have enough information to figure that out. So at Q star, the profit maximizing output level, it's a mouthful. They sell every unit at this price, but the average cost of every unit is up here. Is that the situation you want to be in? No, not so much, right? Because if every unit costs you this much to produce and you sell it for this much, how big is your profit? It's not. Notice I got the red pen out for this, right? In fact, you don't have an economic profit, you have an economic loss. You're not covering the economic costs of all of your inputs. So this is the question of loss. What happens when there is loss? Well, we know when there was economic profit, firms entered until that profit was competed away. When there's a loss, what do you think happens? Well, in the long run, you'd expect firms to exit. So let's think about this from a long run perspective. When there's a loss in the long run, you will expect firms to exit. The opposite of enter, right? Up here they entered, economic profits invite entry, and here when there's a loss, you'd expect firms to exit. Now, why is that a long run thing? Well, the long run is the period of time where all inputs are variable, and so for a firm to exit, they have to completely get out of that business, out of that industry. So that can only happen if all inputs are variable, right? If they can eliminate all connections, they can sell off their factories, eliminate their fleet of trucks, whatever it is, whatever industry they're in. So they can only exit in the long run. But if they do that, some firms exit. That causes the supply curve to shift to the left in the larger market. Right, so for the market, supply shifts to the left. It drives the price down. Right? So this is demand and marginal revenue 2. The less of it is sold in the larger marketplace. It drives the price up. And you move to a new equilibrium that is higher on the demand curve. That's a higher price for the, make this a little bit darker through here. The demand and marginal revenue curve is a little higher. And I happen to skip to the chase, right, where it just hits at the bottom of the ATC. If you were drawing this yourself and you didn't get exactly there the first time, it just takes a few iterations, right? You could say, well, the economic loss got smaller, and then it shifts up again. Or if you shifted it too much, there's a little economic profit, then some firms enter. But eventually, it'll settle here because the long run scenario is right here, right at break even, where the price is just equal to the average total cost. And so there you have economic loss, and what happens? Firms exit, and so at least in the long run, firms exit, and you get back to that point of economic break even. So I really want to pause and ask for questions, but I realize that in this format, I can't hear you. So I will keep going. You pause the video. I'm going to post some other resources. You have the textbook; it's done really well, and you've got me. You can email, we can Zoom, I can call, whatever we need to. So make sure everybody's on board here. So the last thing to talk about then is the scenario of economic losses, but in the short run, right? Because that exit means that you can completely eliminate all ties to the industry. And that's a long run thing. Sometimes we're in the short run, and that doesn't happen. So what do you do in the short run? What do you do when some input is fixed? Because when you have a fixed input, you have a fixed cost. And you can't, if it's fixed, it means in the short run you can't get out of that. So then what do you do? Well, let's look at that. So here's our market graph on the left. And then here's our representative firm. And you've got the market graph on the left, you find the equilibrium. That gives you the demand and marginal revenue curve for the representative firm. So, all right, what's the profit maximizing output level? Well, I have to compare marginal revenue and marginal cost. Right, so I draw my marginal cost curve here. I get Q star for the firm. That's the profit maximizing output level for the firm. That means the best output level. So it either maximizes profit, you could break even, you could even have a loss, but you're minimizing your loss. Right? That's the best output level you can reach if you produce it all. So now this is going to be another situation with losses. Right? So we're going to draw the average total cost curve in here. Remember, it hits its minimum where marginal cost goes through it because the marginal always drags the average along. And then at Q star, you're losing this much money per unit. Right? Here's the price you can sell it for. Here's the cost per unit. And then you multiply that by all the units that you produce and sell. And you get a box that looks like this, and this is your economic loss. Make a better N. There we go, econ loss. So our question though is, what about the short run? And so in the short run, you have some inputs that are fixed. And if you have some inputs that are fixed, then you have some costs that are fixed. And you have to pay those costs whether you operate or not. So the question is, how do I compare my operating loss, to fixed costs? Now, understand that in the long run, as soon as you're able to get out from under this, factory or whatever your fixed input is that's causing your fixed cost, as soon as you can get out from under that, you'll want to, right? You'd like to exit. But in the short run, you can't exit because you have something fixed, some input that's fixed. And so the question is, how does your operating loss, that's this econ loss right here, compare to your fixed costs? And the other way that we can think about this, let me change colors for this. What color haven't we used yet? Let's use yellow. Can I cover the variable costs of production? So, because my decision in the short run when there are losses are, should I shut down? Oops, it turned for me. It's not going to let me turn the whole thing. I want to know, do I shut down or operate at a loss? I realize this is the same thing that I wrote up here in the top right corner. It's not a very good asterisk. Let's try that again. Oh, that's closer. Compare my operating loss to my fixed costs. If I shut down, If I shut down, then I pay my fixed costs. I lay everybody off. I don't produce anything. Right? I turn the lights off. I lock the doors. I turn the thermostat down. I cut my variable costs down to zero, but I still have to pay my fixed costs. If I operate at a loss, then I keep everybody coming in. We produce stuff, we sell it, and at the end of the day, I lose money, equal to that red box right there, the economic loss. So the question is, can I cover my variable costs of production? I don't think the yellow is going to show up on the white very well, so let's pick, here we go. What about that ugly brown color? So what we need is my average variable cost curve. So I'm going to draw in my average variable cost curve. Let's suppose it looks like this. Average variable cost. All right, so these are all of the variable costs of production. These are the things associated with the costs associated with the variable inputs, like your labor and your raw materials and the utilities that just run the machines. So if this is my average variable cost curve, then at Q star, I can see that the price is higher than my average variable cost. So I'll make a note, price is greater than average variable cost. That means I can cover the costs of the workers, right? All the wages, I can cover the raw materials and the resources that go into it. All of the variable costs I can cover and a little bit more. And that little bit more, that offsets my fixed costs. So I can cover some of my fixed costs. I can defray my fixed costs. I can't cover all of them. There's still this big area of loss right here, right? But I can cover some of them, which means in this case, if your price you can sell it for is greater than your average variable cost, then it's optimal to operate at a loss, because this loss that you're sustaining is smaller than your fixed costs. And if in the short run, if you just shut down, you'd still have to pay your fixed costs. So you're actually minimizing your loss by operating. And that's a cool insight that you can get by looking at that average variable cost curve. So now I want to do this again, but I'll try to do this quickly. Get the setup here. Demand, supply, right? So this is for the market. Here's our equilibrium, price in equilibrium, quantity in equilibrium, and the firm is a price taker, right? So the demand and marginal revenue curve for the firm is a horizontal line at the market price. We want to find Q star, the profit maximizing output level. Well, you need marginal revenue and marginal cost, right? So there's lowercase, there's Q star for the firm. Now we said this firm is losing money, right? So we're going to put the average the average total cost curve in here. There's your average total cost curve. At Q star, if it sells every unit at this price, but every unit costs it that much to produce, then you know that they are losing money, right? That they're suffering an economic loss equal to that red box right there. And so the question is, in the short run, what do they do? Right? So here's the econ loss short run question, right? So operate or shut down. So this is exactly what we did in the last graph as well, right? Faced the same question, should I operate a loss or should I shut down? In the last case, they could cover their average variable costs. What if that's not true? What if their average variable cost curve looks like this? It's also sort of U-shaped. It hits its minimum where marginal cost goes through, but notice that it gets closer and closer and closer to average total cost. That's because the difference between them is average fixed costs, and we know that they get smaller as you increase in Q. So here's the question, what if at Q star your average variable costs are higher than your price? So average variable cost greater than price. Well, that means the price I can sell it for doesn't even cover my average variable costs. I can't even cover the labor and the raw materials and the utilities specifically for running the machines to make stuff. So I'm going to lose money on my variable costs. And on top of that, I have to pay my fixed costs, which is going to be the rest of this distance. But notice what that means. That would mean my operating loss is larger than if I just shut down and paid my fixed costs. So what do you think you should do then? If you lose money just on your variable costs by operating and you have to pay your fixed costs on top of that, that means you're losing the most money by operating. And so the optimal decision in this case is to shut down. So now realize that this is a short run question, and as soon as they're able to get out from under everything, they'd probably like to exit the industry altogether, right? And not have any fixed inputs and not have any fixed costs and not be in that business. But while they're stuck, they have to make this decision, operate or shut down. So when average variable cost is greater than the price, then that would suggest that you should shut down. All right, there you go. Those are the short run scenarios for loss in perfect competition. Notice in the long run, though, you're going to push back to the same place. Downward sloping market demand curve. There's the market supply curve. Right, so they're price takers. That equilibrium, market equilibrium price becomes the demand and marginal revenue curve for the firm. And we can find that's a pretty sloppy asterisk, isn't it? Let's get rid of that. Let's try again. Q star for the firm is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And then in the long run, right, we know that that if there's economic losses, eventually firms will exit. If there are economic profits, firms will enter. The long run scenario is going to be one of break even. So there are a couple things to note about the long run, right, in perfect competition. So let's just make long run notes. In the long run, it's break even, so there's no economic profit. Okay. That is, they just break even. Because if there was an economic profit invites entry and the supply curve would shift out and drive the price down and compete away those profits. If there were economic losses, in the long run, firms would exit until the supply curve shifts back and the price goes up to where the firms are just breaking even. I didn't label them right. This is the market. This is the representative firm. Should have labeled that. So no economic profit, but they achieve efficiency. One, because over here they achieve what's called allocative efficiency, because in the market, the marginal benefit and marginal cost are equal. So you remember when we talked about consumer surplus, right, and producer surplus. So this is allocative efficiency, right, because they maximize consumer and producer surplus. So they achieve allocative efficiency because in the market they maximize the economic surplus, right, from trade. And over here, let me change colors because I already used orange here. Over here, each unit is produced at the minimum average total cost, right? That their Q star lines up with the low point, the minimum point on the average total cost curve. So that's what we call, let's move this up, productive efficiency. The evidence of that is right there. So you achieve both allocative efficiency and productive efficiency. No other market structure model that we're going to talk about does that. Okay? Achieves both of those. In fact, none of them are really going to achieve any of those, at least fully. So perfect competition is sort of this poster child of efficiency. The thing is, in the real world, it rarely exists, right? There are very few cases that actually line up with perfect competition, at least all of the aspects of it. And even those that do, remember one of the characteristics are homogeneous goods. So there's no variety, and that's one of the trade-offs. And that's what we're going to gain in the next model that we look at, monopolistic competition. We're going to get variety, and that may be something that we value, but we have a small trade-off in terms of efficiency. So that's where we're headed. I know there's a lot here, but I think it's all manageable. So watch this a couple times if you need to. Check out the other resources, and then when you're ready,